Let's grow together. Now, once again, welcome Reverend Martin for today's message.
If newspapers had been around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, people living in the Middle East might have seen this headline: Israelites make startling announcement. Now, we'll get back to that in just a moment. Meanwhile, Israel then, as now, was a tiny country surrounded by many other countries, some of which were hostile. And these countries all had their unique languages, customs, and religions. And traveling through the Middle East in those days was difficult and dangerous. And that prevented the kinds of cultural cross-pollination that are increasingly common in our world. And so, not having much in the way of access to other people's points of view, it was common for each culture to be very tribal and self-contained. There were some commonalities, however, and among them was a fondness for multiple gods and goddesses. There were sun gods, moon goddesses, gods of love and war, gods of water, air, earth, and fire. For those who enjoy having a good time, there were even gods and goddesses of wine. And this really must have been a lot of trouble for people to keep track of. So many deities to pray to sacrifice to placate. And what if you prayed to the wrong god and you ticked off the god that you should have prayed to? Very confusing and time-consuming. Imagine if, when you went to Walmart, instead of taking your items to one cash register, you had to go to a different register for each of the different items in your cart. So, the ancient Hebrew prophet must have startled a lot of people when he proclaimed, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God." And I can only imagine that in the neighboring countries of the Philistines, the horror this statement must have evoked. Imagine the consternation that would have erupted if Philistine spies, returning home to report on what was going on in their neighbor of Israel, broke this news. "Oh, gracious King, we have just returned from the land of the Hebrews, and we have something very disturbing to report. They claim that there is only one God." "What?" says the king, as the queen sitting nearby starts to get the vapors. "Yes, your majesty, I tremble to utter such sacrilege, but they claim there's only one God, and he is the Hebrew God. They're saying, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God.'" And the king starts to turn purple, and the queen faints and falls onto the floor. "Oh, but there's more, your highness. The Israelites also claim that they are God's chosen people." And the king leaps to his feet, flushed with indignation, and shouts, "This is an outrage. Send in the generals. This means war." Well, throughout history, many groups of people have considered themselves to be people chosen by the deity for a purpose, such as to act as God's agents on earth. The phenomenon of a chosen people is particularly common in the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But it originally referred exclusively to the Israelites. Now, in Judaism, chosenness is the belief that the Jews, via descent from the ancient Israelites, are the chosen people. That is to say, chosen to be in a special covenant with God. And this idea is stated explicitly in the book of Deuteronomy, and it's alluded to elsewhere in the Hebrew scriptures, using other terms such as holy people. And the three largest Jewish denominations, Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, maintain the belief that the Jews have been chosen by God for a purpose. And this choice is seen as charging the Jewish people with a specific mission, to be a light unto the nations, and to exemplify their covenant with God as described in the Torah. So that's the ancient idea of the chosen people, a group of people who've been given the opportunity to sense God's closeness, to hear the truth, to relay that message to the world. It was the Jews, of course, who introduced the world to monotheism, along with a system of ethics, morals, and laws that have shaped our modern view of life and its purpose. And it is the survival of Judaism to this day that attests to the eternal value of those ideas. But what about the rest of us? Are we chosen? Could we be the chosen people? Well, you might be surprised to know that several contemporary religious teachings claim that they are chosen because they are of the house of Israel, not necessarily by physical ancestry, but by spiritual ancestry. For instance, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that this earth will be conquered and ruled over by 144,000 of the elect, descendants spiritually of the Jews. Seventh-day Adventists founded their movement on the idea that they were the end-time people, the chosen people, declaring the message of the book of Revelation to the world. The Mormons believe that they are descendants, literally, of the house of Israel, both by blood and by adoption. In Mormonism, Mormons, or the Latter-day Saints, as they prefer to be called, are viewed as chosen people because they have accepted Christ through the ritual of baptism, and most practicing Mormons have received a patriarchal blessing that reveals them to be from the house of Israel. And this lineage, as I mentioned, may be related by blood or through adoption. And as you may know, the Mormons in Salt Lake City keep one of the world's largest collections of genealogies, and that's why it's important for them to be able to trace their ancestry. The Rastafarians believe they're the true chosen people because they are descended from Israel's King Solomon and Ethiopia Queen Sheba. And the Unification Church believes that Korea is the chosen nation, chosen by God to be the birthplace of the leading figure of the age, at least according to the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who coincidentally happened to be both Korean and the self-proclaimed leading figure of the age. Funny how those things work. The Dalai Lama is said to be the reincarnation of the earlier Dalai Lamas, and a group of Tibetan Buddhists find him as a young boy. And because of that, the Dalai Lamas tend to serve a very long time. But in the Roman Catholic Church, the School of Cardinals vote on who should be the next pope. They supposedly figure out who it is that God wants for the job. And they tend to choose rather old men, which always makes me suspicious that they've hedged their bets. You know, if they made the wrong choice, at least he can't be around all that long. Well, who are the chosen people? And is there any chance at all that perhaps we might be the chosen people? Well, think of it this way. Adoptive parents tell their adopted children that they're special because they were chosen, not just a biological occurrence or an accident. They are the products of choice. And by definition, a parent cannot be both biological and adoptive. They're either one or the other. But as the children of God, we are both chosen and conceived. Chosen is a perfect idea in the mind of God and made out of God's spiritual essence. Now, in the Old Testament, the Jews were referred to as God's treasured people. And that idea carried over into Christianity, which is not surprising because the early followers of Jesus were Jewish, and they believed that they were practicing a reform version of Judaism. And Jesus is quoted in the Gospel of John as telling his disciples, "You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you," ordained meaning invested with power, "ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, lasting fruit, that whatsoever you ask of the Father, he will give you." Now, statements like that confuse a lot of people. Here, as in so many spots in the gospel, it's hard to tell if Jesus is referring to himself or to God. And the reason it's hard to tell is that he found no sense of separation. As he often said, the Father and I are one. Therefore, Jesus was convinced that he spoke for God, which is why his word had so much power. Writing in the Science of Mind textbook, our founder, Ernest Holmes, says, "We must realize that the universal spirit is the supreme knower in the universe. The law can only operate on that which is known. In such degree as our knowledge partakes of its original knowledge or nature, it has power. Those people who've had the greatest sense of the divine presence have had the greatest power over that law." This was the secret of the power of Jesus. How wonderfully he did this constitutes the history of Christianity and much of the enlightenment of modern civilization. And yet, it would be a grave mistake to suppose that he was different from other men. He was a man who knew himself and his direct relationship to the whole. This was the secret of his success. To think of Jesus as being different from other men is to misunderstand his mission and his purpose in life. He was a way shower, and he proved his way to be a correct one. His method was direct, dynamic, and powerful, and yet extremely easy and simple to comprehend. He believed in God, in himself, as power and reality. And believing in God within, he was compelled to believe in himself. To which I might add, because he believed in the God within, he not only believed in himself, but he also believed in others, because he knew that they were chosen too. He said, "All things that are mine are yours, and all things that are yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them." He was talking about the one. The basis of our power over conditions is the realization that we are the chosen people. But our spiritual work will never bear fruit unless we are convinced that we are chosen. We've been chosen to be individuals of infinite possibilities, living in a universe of infinite possibilities. We have the power to make bad choices. But God, being omniscient, all-knowing, doesn't. And therefore, we must know that we are rightly chosen. Of course, what we're going to do with that choice is up to us. And that is a one-day-at-a-time job. And when things are not going well in our lives, we sometimes give up on ourselves too soon. And when we do that, we tend to lose sight of the spiritual principles and laws that govern the universe and everything in it. There are times when we've all thrown up our hands and said to ourselves, "Oh, it's a beautiful philosophy, but it just doesn't seem to work." Or, "This seems to work for others, but not for me." Well, laws and principles are not discriminatory. So if I'm having to struggle with something in my life and my spiritual practice doesn't seem to be taking care of it, and meanwhile, the cranky old man down the street seems to be doing just fine, I can get upset and decide he's getting an unfair benefit out of life, blessings that he doesn't deserve. But whether I like it or not, the man down the street has whatever he has by right of consciousness. A friend who's a stand-up comic used to create what he called negative affirmations. And one of them was, "My good bypasses me and goes to a cocktail waitress in Seattle." Well, the truth, of course, is that our good never bypasses us. We simply fail to accept our good because we're too busy dwelling on negatives. Our major tool for moving ahead in life consciously and successfully is spiritual mind treatment. It's at the core of what we do, and it's our systematic way of changing our belief systems for the better. The process has 5 steps: recognition, where we realize, where we know, where we feel that God is all there is. Second step is unification, the realization that if God is all there is, then I can't be separated from God. The third step is realization or declaration, declaring the spiritual truth about my situation, or as I like to think of it, recognizing the spiritual antidote to whatever is going awry in my life. Fourth step is gratitude. I'm thankful that Spirit is moving and taking care of this. And the fifth step is release. I let this go, and I allow the law to do its perfect work. Now, it's a wonderful system, but this 5-step prayer process won't work unless we firmly believe step 2, that I am one with God, that God is all there is. So I must be some part of God, some part of good. There is nothing else I could possibly be. Now, sometimes those of us who've been in this movement for a while rush past step 2, so we can get right to that realization step. But I think it's worth spending any amount of time necessary to know the truth about ourselves. Because if there's any doubt about my oneness with the One, continuing my treatment may not be terribly effective. I must become very clear on this truth before I can get any benefit from it. Each one of these steps calls upon us to realize something, to realize, to become fully aware, to bring into existence. Emmett Fox wrote, "If there's a particular truth that you do not realize, then it does not belong to you. It will belong to you as soon as you realize it, but not before. The moment that you realize a particular truth, it begins to work in your life. It begins to change, first your consciousness, and then your body and your outer circumstances." Or as Ernest Holmes put it, "Until we awake to the fact that we are one in nature with God, we shall not find the way of life. Until we realize that our own word has the power of life, we will not see clearly." The Bible points out that man has the same power in his own life and in his own world that it claims for God. Now, people come to this center for many reasons: physical or emotional healing, relationship problems, financial problems. But for me, one of the greatest things we can do in this teaching is to elevate our opinions of ourselves. Because no matter how highly we think of ourselves, there's always something higher to which to aspire. Many years ago, I saw a bumper sticker on a car which carried a very simple, if ungrammatical, message: God don't make no junk. There was a wonderful movie several years ago called Hugo Cabret, and it was about a little boy who was an orphan. His only living relative was an uncle who was very emotionally distant, and his uncle took care of all the clocks in the Grand Central train station in Paris. And one day the uncle died, and having nowhere else to go, little 10-year-old Hugo was on his own, and he lived in the walls and secret passages of the train station, and he kept the clocks running. And he met the granddaughter of one of the merchants in the station, and they went up to the very top of the tower, and they were looking at the beautiful city of Paris after dark, the city of lights, all laid out for them to see. And Hugo said to her, "Sometimes I come up here at night, even when I'm not fixing the clocks, just to look at the city. I like to imagine that the world is one big machine. You know, machines never have any extra parts. They have the exact number and type of parts they need. So I figure if the entire world is a big machine, I have to be here for some reason. And that means that you have to be here for some reason too." Why are the Jews, a tiny minority of the earth's population, so prominent in worldwide affairs, the arts, the sciences, the education, the business, the finance, and governmental affairs? Is it because they are the chosen people? No. I think it's because they believe that they are. And of course, they have the benefit of thousands of years of hearing that. There is no arrogance in thinking of ourselves as the chosen people, as long as I think of myself as one of the chosen people and not as the chosen person. After all, Jesus did not pray, "My Father, which art in heaven," but "Our Father, which art in heaven." Ernest Holmes' most celebrated saying, perhaps, was, "There is a power for good in the universe that is greater than you are, and you can use it." And so this morning I will paraphrase that in a few ways. There is a power for good in the universe, and I am a part of it. There is a power for good in the universe, and I am within it. There is a power for good in the universe, and it has chosen me to live fully and joyfully in this specific place and time. Jesus is quoted as saying, "With God, all things are possible." Well, now why? Why would he say that? Of course, God being all-powerful, God can do anything. No, what Jesus actually meant was, within God, all things are possible. And of course, you are within God, and there's literally no other place you could ever be. Jesus also told someone who came to him for a healing, "Do you believe all things are possible to one who believes?" And the man replied, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." Well, I do believe, help my unbelief. That describes us so often. What he was saying was that his faith wasn't really 100% just yet. Maybe it was only 67%. And he was asking for help with the 33% of his belief system that needed help. I don't know about you, but I need to be at this center on a regular basis to help my unbelief. Or as Raymond Charles Barker used to say, I need to be here Sunday mornings to remember the truth that I may have temporarily forgotten during the week. And what is that truth? That you and I are chosen to live life fully and joyfully right here and right now. Question: would you give a blank check to just anyone? If you would, come and see me right after the service. No, you would choose very carefully the people you gave blank checks to. In fact, there may not be a single person on this planet to whom you'd give a blank check. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone. But you and I have been chosen to receive a limitless supply of blank checks from the universe, and we can fill them out however we wish. The world is not against you, quite the opposite. The universe, the entire universe, is conspiring to bring you your good. We fill out our blank check and then trust that the law of mind knows how to cash that check for us. In other words, we choose what we want, but God chooses how we'll get it. So, we're not only the chosen people, we are the choosing people. As we practice this science of mind philosophy, we're consciously choosing the lives that we live. I learned this week that December 31st is Make Up Your Mind Day. Proof that there's a day for pretty much everything. But the idea is to start choosing. And the fact is that every day should be Make a Choice Day. You have everything within you that you need to deal with anything that may come up today, or tomorrow, or next year. And the answer to any problem begins with the realization that within God, all things are possible, and we are within God, and God is within us because we are the chosen people. We are chosen to experience God's spiritual magnificence in new and unique ways. In recent editions of our Science of Mind textbook, there's a lovely preface written by Jean Houston, PhD. She writes, in part, "If I were to state the essence of the teaching of the science of mind, it would be that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. The core of each human being is the original creative genius of the universe. Consciously or unconsciously, we direct the flow of universal mind into form. This grants us tremendous power, and with it, the innate responsibility to make or break our world through the extraordinary working power of our minds." And she finishes by saying, "These are the times. We are the people. And this is the book that can help us do it." A true definition of a spiritually chosen person is one whose conscious mind, operating within the field of universal divine intelligence, makes creative choices which are fulfilled as positive experiences. When we're living as the chosen people, when we are acting as choosing people, we not only live in abundance and joy, we are able to spread that abundance and joy around, to share it with others, and to demonstrate to others that the chosen life is a life well worth living. There is a power for good in the universe, and it has chosen me and you to live fully and joyfully in this specific place and time. These are the times. We are the people, the chosen people, the choosing people. Namaste.